Welcome to another in our monthly webinar series. Our focus in Q2 is really around resource management and the various challenges PS organizations have with resource management. In particular, this month we're going to be focusing on resource scheduling, and I'm going to kick it off with a general conversation about virtual teams, because although many companies still have office space, they still have those telecommuters and remote subsidiaries, their global footprint, people, virtual offices. So how do you deal with those, and what kind of technologies can help you with that? First, just a quick reminder, the month of May is coming up, which is always a fun time for a lot of companies, and a lot of conferences are happening. So we in particular are sponsors of 3 major conferences coming up. The Technology Services World is actually just in a couple of weeks down in San Diego. FinancialForce Community Live, we're a gold sponsor. It's the first time they're doing a standalone event, which is in Las Vegas. And Suite World, once again, will be in San Diego or San Jose, and we are a silver sponsor. So we're hoping to find some of our friends in the industry, and those of you who would join the webinar, if you plan on attending any of these events, we'd love to have you stop by and see us at the expos in each of those conferences. But on to the topic. So from a team management perspective, obviously, earlier in the year, last quarter, we were talking about project management and metrics and running the organization, and that really focuses around people. It all starts with people. That's what a professional services company is all about. Obviously, you're enabling some kind of technology or some kind of process or something, but it all starts with people, and those are your key assets in the organization. About where do you have those people, like how do you access those people, where do they report into, and the old model was office space. You have an office, people come into the office, they plug into the machine, so to speak, and that's you see people every day. It's got the water cooler references. For those of you, I'm dating myself when I say that, because the whole water cooler concept is sort of falling to the wayside because telecommuting became a big thing. Earth Day, save the pollution, give people the opportunity to work from home, makes you happy from a bottom line, your employees happy because they can not have to travel so much and be on the road, and you're still plugged into the office, but you're remote at that point. Okay, and now it's what I'm seeing actually in more and more offices is sort of a virtual company. There's still a headquarters, obviously, but the headquarters could be just one person, and everyone else works from home. They work from a home office or some other space that they've decided will work for them to help them get their work done. And so now you're dealing with virtual companies, or what can also be put to akin from a virtual perspective is if you have resources in other office spaces, but obviously that's an office space situation. So you have the virtual worker, and the virtual worker is plugged in through social media. They're plugged in through all the technologies to kind of keep connected with the world, but they are, in a sense, on their own in a virtual environment. So some of the things I want to talk about in this presentation is what's unique about being in a virtual team, and some of the challenges both for the employee and the employer in dealing with a virtual team environment. Okay. So specifically, for an individual, and this all depends on the individual, right? A virtual team for an individual, some people can do it and some people can't. There's a unique approach that you have to take when you are an individual in a virtual company. And first and foremost, I think one of your main things is focus, right? Like, how do I make sure I focus on work? I'm at home. This is where I live, and so where do you find the place that you can get the work done? What kind of environment can I set up that it feels like I'm in a working environment, and I can separate my personal life, my watching TV versus doing the work that I need to get done in the house if you're working out of a home office, for example. So those are a couple of the unique challenges I find for individuals, and it's not for everyone, and managers, smart managers should be aware of that. Because not everyone can work in a virtual environment. Some people need more structure. Some people need those water coolers. What I find in talking with individuals that are in a virtual environment or telecommuting, for example, they'll actually say, they're worried that people will think they're off, goofing around or going grocery shopping or doing whatever during the day, instead of actually being as if they were in an office with the boss right around the corner. So they tend to make themselves over-available, and so that they sort of overcompensate sometimes. But it is hard to know if somebody's available or not when they're remote. You have to obviously set some guidelines so the individual knows that they need to be responsive and they need to be visible on whatever instant message type technology that you use. But knowing about availability and what's the guidance for them to be available is a challenge. Then, of course, it's the communication. So you're working on your own. You don't have the conference room meetings as much anymore. You may have webinars or phone calls or something like that. But being aware of what work is coming and what work you should be working on. And that's going to be a lot of the focus of this conversation is really project awareness. What's my workload? What's my priorities? Because you are basically managing yourself, even though you do have a team and you do have a manager, even in a virtual environment, but you are on your own a lot. And how do you plug in and make sure that you know what's coming down the pike, what's in the pipe already, and what are you supposed to be working on? How do you make sure that individual feels they're connected to the team and connected to the company? It's very easy to log in and check email, but how do you make sure that there's camaraderie? How do you make sure that there's an awareness? If somebody gets stuck, they know where to go. How do you make sure that there's just a sense of being a part of something versus being an individual? And of course, communication. How do you make sure that you're getting the information from the individual, you're passing the information to the individual, and that they're able to consume that and act on that, and there's appropriate follow-ups and statuses and things like that to keep everyone in the loop. So a virtual team for an individual, I think, is actually a bigger challenge than the manager, because the manager at the end of the day is still running a company. And the individual, if you're in an office space, there's somebody in the cubicle next to you, or there's somebody down in the break room that you can talk to, and there's a different sort of culture or environment when you're in office space versus individually, and being able to make sure that you're still connected in. Now, for management, there are still some unique challenges, but the manager needs to know when you're available, or at least set guidelines on when you're expected to be available, and when you're not available, to be able to find a way to reach out, to connect with you, and find out, oh, you're sick, okay? How do I know? What else do I need to do? Who do I need to follow up with to let your customers know, or the people that you needed to do work with, that you were sick, and so they're going to reset expectations on deliverables. So knowing about availability, being visible for availability, and knowing what the workloads are supposed to be is a key challenge for managers, because you have to set up processes a little bit more structured to get that information back on a regular basis. How do you effectively communicate the work that's coming in and the assignment and what individuals on the team are supposed to be working on? How do you make sure that handshake works and the person knows what they're supposed to be doing, and you have an idea of when they're supposed to be finishing it, obviously. Same challenges as the individual. You want to make sure that the individual is connected to the team, and you want to make sure that there's good communication so they know what's going on a regular basis. But managers have a couple other challenges as well. Something as simple as laptop maintenance becomes a little challenging, because now in a virtual team, you don't necessarily have a central IT desk. You have Best Buy's Geek Squad and Office Depot's, computer genius people, or whatever their term is. So technical assistance becomes a little bit more difficult, and that's where you tend to have to start going with softer solutions that can accommodate more in the cloud type networking. Office 365 comes to mind. Some of the PSA solutions and stuff like that, where everyone's plugging into a central location and there's a help desk associated with that vendor product. And not so much an IT desk that basically images your laptops. So that's a unique challenge that management faces when you're dealing with a virtual company. And of course, training. You don't necessarily have the luxury of setting a training course, bringing everyone in, and doing a full-time sales methodology training or project manager training. You're sort of looking at one-offs and helping people take the courses that make sense for them from a staff development perspective. But a lot of courses today are remote as well, so making sure you're connecting people with training at the right time throughout the organization. So those challenges, there's challenges on both sides running a virtual company. It's not all about management. It's not all about being an individual, but obviously there's challenges that have to be respected within the two levels so that you can understand how best to execute on a virtual team. Okay. So availability and scheduling, I think, is one of the harder things to deal with in a virtual team management because you don't know what you don't know. It's easy to see if somebody's not sitting at their desk, but when you're 3,000 miles away, you can't see that somebody's not at their desk. You can only see if the little green lights on your Skype that says you're online or something like that. So, and today with the smartphones, all of that is available on your smartphone. So now can you be over-connected almost? So the challenges on the virtual is, do you know what you're supposed to be working on? Okay, and not only what you're supposed to be working on, what are your deadlines, what are your priorities to get things done, and do you have that guidance? When you're working and you're sort of your own manager, so to speak, in a virtual environment, you have to always keep in mind, what am I working on, and is this what I'm supposed to be working on? Because quite quickly, what you're supposed to be working on could be very different from what you are working on, and chaos can ensue, right, because you're in a virtual environment. So make sure that you have to find a way to effectively communicate to your individuals what the priorities are for the company, of course, and for the project, keeping in mind that person also has their own personal priorities and making sure there's a match. So a lot of communication, but a lot of awareness of what am I supposed to be working on, okay, and making sure that you're keeping on top of that, okay. So some of the keys that I think are important to virtual team management are things like making sure your resources know exactly actually what they're supposed to be working on, okay. Everyone knows that they have to get their timesheet in. Everyone knows that they should be double checking and letting the boss know when they're going to take vacation, or if they run into a situation where they need some more training or certification renewal. Those are all personal things that people should be responsible for. But really, if you're supposed to be working on Project X and your deadline is next Tuesday, the person who's running that project needs to make sure that that person knows about the deadline. So the resource needs to be kept up to date on what the plans of the company are. They're just not going to absorb it from osmosis, obviously. Keeping management informed and keeping the team informed. So both directions of communication. The individual reporting back on how progress is coming along, if there's any issues, risks that they're seeing, so the project manager is informed and can take action, and management also is pushing the information down of, hey, this is coming, make sure that we've got resources available and skilled. The other thing in a virtual team, and actually this is probably not just virtual team, but just in professional services teams in general, how best to share the information and the experience that you're getting as you complete projects. There's all those project methodologies out there where you have like a lessons learned or a post-mortem, but it's really how best can you capture that information so that people can consume that information and build out a knowledge repository. So if you did something unique or beneficial for customer A that could be reused over and over again, maybe a status report format or a best way to automate your time card approvals, things like that. Where can you publish that? How can you make sure that there's awareness in the team? And that all comes from communication of the knowledge repositories that you're building internally. And then, of course, maintaining schedules for any planned and unfortunately unplanned outages, vacations, obviously, any kind of company holidays coming up so that you can work around those schedules. Now, a PSA tool is something that is typically solves most of those items because it gives you that technology platform to record what work is coming, what work you need people to work on, to start working on, the timeline for that, and then, of course, people being able to report what it is they're working on. So what's coming, what the plan is, what am I working on, and all of those aspects of a PSA have resource management components that help you answer those questions and be able to communicate. So a lot of those communication challenges between the manager and the individual can be met in the middle with the PSA solution. The PSA also drives your definition of your process and the compliance to that process, making sure you update your schedules on a weekly basis, make sure you submit your timesheets on a weekly basis, make sure we know what projects are coming in on a weekly basis so that everyone knows there's a central place to look to see what's coming, what's in work, and what's done. Now the resource management, many of you on the phone here may actually have a PSA solution and have resource management in place with that PSA solution. And what's one of the main drivers for resource management? It's not just to say, hey, go ahead and put timesheets against this project. It's, I need you to work on this project for this time frame so that I have committed you to this project and I know what you're busy working on, or at least what you're supposed to be working on. I'm going to keep going back to that supposed to be, okay? Because by doing that scheduling, I have now given myself visibility as the manager to who's available, and I've given visibility to the individual on what projects they should be working on. Okay, so it answers both questions. And it also gives resources the availability to speak up when there's something that maybe is of concern or something that will impact their workload. If something's being scheduled for 300% on 4 different projects, that individual has the responsibility to say, I can't work more than 24 hours a day, and in fact, I can't really work more than maybe 16 hours a day on a regular basis, otherwise I'm going to burn out. So it gives the resource information about what's being scheduled. It gives them the opportunity to provide feedback and input back to the management, and also, of course, when they're planning on vacation, to be able to make people very much aware of the impact their vacation may have and be able to do that coordination well in advance to accommodate their schedule. It really becomes the focus of the organization because all of that information is there, and it answers many, many questions just by keeping the scheduling up to date. But the tool itself is many things to many people. It doesn't answer just one question. So the screenshot in here is an example tool that just shows like how busy someone is and how busy people are, how many people are overbooked on things, for example. But when you select a PSA and you use a PSA, even in those examples that I gave of what the intent of using a PSA is for resource management, depending on who you are in the PSA tool, you really have different objectives. So if you are a manager, or you're in management, or you're resource management, or a department head, or the CEO, or the practice lead, your focus on a PSA is to understand how many people are on bench, right? Who's available, who's not hitting their utilization targets. How can I help those people get allocated to projects? Where are people overbooked even? Okay. How are projects being delivered? What's the plan for project delivery? And this is not necessarily task level. This is like people. When are people supposed to be working on this project? That's the whole resource scheduling piece. So I can plan on, if all of these people do all of this work by the end of August, we should be able to deliver and invoice and make that revenue up by the end of August. So that factors into your resource forecast needs and your financial forecast needs. And with your resource forecast needs, now you get your demand versus capacity, breaking that down by types of resources, maybe skill sets. I need so many more Java developers. I need Apex coders. I need project managers. Okay. So the scheduling for a manager is very much not only how are we doing as a business, but how are we going to be doing as a business, and what do I need to take action on proactively. Along with that are process controls. Don't have people talk in the hallway or Skype an IM and says, hey, I need you to fix this page in Salesforce for me without having some kind of controls in place that says the person can't actually record time against that project unless they've been scheduled to work on it. So you get a little bit of a handshake there of control. So it does help enforce process controls in that respect. Now from a project manager who has the multiple arms and the multiple responsibilities, what a PSA tool gives them the visibility of is understanding who's available and who can I request to be on my team. Are the people that I typically work with over busy? Can I make some negotiations to get those resources on my project and substitute them on other projects? Just giving general visibility of where are the people that I typically work with, or where are the people that I need, and can I work with them and request them to be on my project. Being able to understand what people may have scheduled for like upcoming vacations or training courses that could potentially conflict with your project. So as the person's working on your project, you can see things in the future related to that. How available are resources, and even to be able to submit requests. And what you need to do for a project manager is It's great if a tool can capture all kinds of information, but you still need to make it very quick and easy for the PM to meet their objective, which is, I have a project to deliver, I need a team, I need to request a team, and I need the right team. So how can I help, get that information into the tool quickly so I get my team quickly and I can kick things off? Okay. And then a bonus, if your PSA tool can handle it, is would you also be able to find someone who's close to the customer location if you're expecting on-site work? Customers that are in Texas would probably prefer someone that is in the Texas area, Oklahoma, New Mexico, versus somebody flying in from London or Boston or Australia. Okay, so if you had some basic information about resources that might be close that are still qualified, that would be great for a PM to be able to request those resources quickly, and then there's cost savings all around. But there's even objectives for the team member, and when you think about the team member and the PSA tool regarding resource scheduling for them, their first and foremost is being able to understand what is the schedule of project work that they need to be involved in, what do they need to be on top of. The scheduling activity itself does not substitute the project manager working with the resource to say, and here's what I actually need you to get done. Okay? It really is more of a time frame commitment so that people understand where the priorities are from a workload regarding projects, where the project priority is, and then, of course, who's the project manager they need to coordinate with. Ideally, the PSA tool also takes a step beyond the schedule and allows the PM to collaborate with their team member to say, and here's the specific activities I need you to do, here's the specific tasks and the due dates for those tasks. And collaboration. If you get stuck on something, back in the day we all used email, but now if you have a platform that supports some kind of collaboration technology like a chatter feed or some kind of RSS feed, those are all great things, like ticketing systems and stuff all have that collaboration through email, or you have a chain of reference that you can go back and look into whether you're in the tool or outside the tool. And then, of course, making sure you give the people the ability to have feedback to management, including project managers, on when they're expecting to take vacation. Now, from a communication needs perspective, the PSA tool has to make sure that it at least knows the time frame for project work, because unless you know the time frame for the project work for the individual, it's really not going to help a lot with the scheduling. You could just say, okay, Jody's busy. But Jody's busy doing what? She's working on Kmart, and Kmart's going to take the next 6 months full time. Okay, that's a lot better information than just knowing that Jody's busy. Okay. Ideally, the communication also provides the ability of what it is you need to do and the feedback that you can give to your project managers on it, that whole collaboration type platform, or indication of, yes, I started it, yes, I finished it, if there's any risks or issues that you identify along the way. Okay. And with project managers making requests for teams, having some kind of process controls in place where the project manager is not necessarily grabbing the person that they want to work with, but that person is already dedicated to 7 other projects. That's just a situation for failure. So you want to make sure that you have some kind of approval processes or some kind of commitment agreement process in place, whether it's in the tool or outside the tool, so that project managers know that they have the right resources committed to them, committed to their project, and they can mitigate that risk of schedule slips simply because resource availability is a challenge. I would say that a lot of the PSA tools on the market today do have some kind of calendar integration or a calendaring system inside themselves. I would consider, especially for the team members, if you use some kind of calendar integration or some kind of mobile app where it's easy to see what you've been assigned to work on and the time frame you need to get it done. Everyone's got smartphones nowadays almost, and there's lots of apps out there that can support information like that. And to be able to bring up a calendar and see what you're supposed to be working on this week or today is really a valuable tool. The trade-off there is you have to make sure the data is up to date in the PSA tool that may be feeding it. So as long as that information is reliable, then you're going to be able to communicate effectively with your team. And then finally, just general communication. When you're working with a virtual team, even with a PSA tool, the PSA tool can't substitute communication and connecting you to the company. Even within TopStep, we have regular team gatherings where it's all virtual, of course, but understanding what marketing efforts are going on in the company so that we understand how our name is getting out there in the industry. What kind of project work is coming in? What kind of project work is ongoing so that the team knows where the focus of the company is coming in from? Giving kudos where kudos are meant to be shared, making sure that you highlight individuals in the company because your team is, like I said, your assets are your people, and they will work hard for you. So highlight their achievements, highlight customer feedback that's complementary to the team, because that will help the individuals in the team know, hey, I can go talk to so and so because they have some information that I would feel comfortable talking to them about. Okay, and emphasize the team goals. You as a company, TopStep has a mission statement, very much a customer-first approach, and emphasizing that so the team, can carry through that message when they work with customers along the way. In today's world, as I've gone through the decades of working in professional services organizations, now social media rules. Everyone's on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we're all communicating through the various collaboration chains. But to be honest, I think the old-fashioned team or town meetings still work. Video conferencing, as the little picture here shows, or being on a webinar or a phone call really makes a difference when you have that personal contact. So in summary, for many of you that have been in or have managed a virtual team, some of this is probably exactly what you've seen happen before. So I'm always about embrace the challenge of managing a virtual team. As a manager, it's not just about managing a team. You have to make sure that you're seeing it from the individual side and giving them the tools they need to be productive, supportive, and plugged into the system or into the company, right? Make sure you empower users to share knowledge to the company, to each other, being able to reach out and feel like you can walk down the hall and ask somebody a question. And of course, any technologies you can provide to help mitigate some of that information tracking, put those process controls in place to support on-demand information that will just benefit you in the long run.